Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Amazon facing fresh criticism over the amount of tax that it's paying.
The online retail giant Amazon paid less tax in the UK last year than the year before, even though its profits almost trebled.
Now to a tale of two retailers. One, an online giant vying to be the biggest company in the world. Yes, it's Amazon. The other, House of Fraser, a high street stalwart which sells high-end goods in department stores up and down the country. It's now in serious trouble. Meanwhile, Amazon paid less UK tax last year, despite profits almost trebling.
Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world, the richest man who's ever lived in the world. Amazon, his company, is one of the country's most valuable. But the company's tax payments are not keeping up with its great wealth. Okay, that's a profound understatement. Here's one example. Last year, Amazon made $5.6 billion in profit. They netted that. But they used tax credits and other benefits to avoid paying any federal income tax. Did you pay federal income tax last year? Oh, one of the biggest companies in the world paid none. Nevertheless, governments around this country, state and local, are racing to provide Amazon with even more perks and tax breaks as it looks to choose the site of its second headquarters, because masochism is very common among state government.
Now, I spoke to Professor Richard Murphy yesterday, Director of Tax Research UK, a tax campaign group. Let's give him his full title, Professor of Political Economy at City University and Chartered Accountant. Richard, we've hauled you back on again today to try and help us out with Amazon's tax bill. Why, when they've made more profit, are they paying less corporation tax, please?
Well, the honest answer is, I don't know. Now,
best guess.
My feed in that. Well, the best guess is that actually, no, I don't know, because, and this is what I want to really say, is that Amazon aren't giving us enough information to find out. And that's the problem, because the accounts that we can see, which everyone is upset about today, only cover a quarter of their sales in the UK. They actually sell over £8 billion of product here a year, and just under $2 billion of those are in the accounts we can see. Now, those accounts show that they're only paying 6.4% tax, and quite a lot of the difference is probably because of the way they account for the payment of pay to their staff through share option schemes, which create all sorts of weird accounting. And that could be part of it. But the reality is that we know from their US accounts they've got 4 times more sales than they include in these UK accounts. And we know that they make the rest of the sales through their Luxembourg branch. And that Luxembourg branch files accounts in the UK because it says it's taxable here, and therefore it files accounts, but it doesn't tell us the figures for the UK, it only tells the figures for the whole of Europe. So the truth is, what we actually can see is not the whole story. The worldwide accounts say Amazon pays tax at just over 20%. The European accounts say that Amazon pays tax at around 25%. And the UK accounts say Amazon pays tax at 6.4%. We may be getting a really bad deal. We may not be, because of that 25% paid across Europe as a whole, a significant part could be paid to HM Revenue and Customs.
One of the things...
The problem is the accounting. As much as the tax, we just don't know.
Not transparent enough.
Yeah, and it's our politicians who are at fault here, let's be clear. Our politicians could solve this. You know, David Cameron said he was going to hold companies to account, and the Labour Party...
Feet to the fire. Was that what he said?
Margaret
Feet to the fire.
Had, and all that. They've all said it, right across the political spectrum. But Parliament hasn't changed the law. We've got 20th century accounting in the 21st century. It's not fit for purpose. The accounting profession, and I am a chartered accountant, drags its feet on this issue and tries to block change. The European Union actually wants reform and wants large companies like Amazon and many others to publish a profit and loss account, a statement of what it does in every single country. It's an idea I actually came up with in 2003. And for tax purposes, companies like Amazon now have to do this, i.e. they have to send to their tax authority, including HM Revenue and Customs, an overview of their activity in every country where they trade. We can have this information, therefore it exists, but our politicians won't demand it published, and that's the real problem.
So we're no closer, are we, to a so-called activity tax, where you're taxed on what you do rather than where you do it?
Well, we don't have the data to be sure whether that's true or not. We certainly, I mean, the aim, according to tax authorities, is to tax profits where they really arise. And that was why I designed this new type of accounting system. And I spent a lot of time negotiating its introduction for tax purposes. But I don't see that data. Nobody in the public sees that data. Only tax authorities do. So we may find that Amazon are paying the right amount of tax, but only HMRC know. But we need to know as well. And that's the important point. But the accountancy profession don't think that reporting tax is important enough to change the rules. Well, therefore, it's up to politicians to say we should change the rules. Okay. We must hold them to account and get the data so we can ensure the right amount of tax is paid in the right place, including here in the UK.
OK, thank you very much, Richard. Professor Richard Murphy, Director of Tax Research UK. That's one of his hats.
To our other top story today, Amazon facing fresh criticism about the amount of tax it is paying in the UK. The online retail giant's corporation tax bill coming to just £4.6 million last year, down from £7.4 million the year before. The company has not broken any rules or done anything illegal, but its UK bill versus profits has now raised questions about the tax system. George Turner is Director of Tax Watch UK. He joins us from central London. George, what questions raised for you?
Well, I think the biggest question is, what is the government going to do about this thing? In 2013, governments from around the world, well, the G8, released a declaration saying that they wanted to end aggressive tax avoidance by multinational companies. That came off the back of years of stories about the global digital giants, companies like Amazon avoiding taxes. And yet 5 years later, we're still getting these stories. So, I mean, what it's showing, if anything, is that the global effort for the last 5 years to try and tackle the tax avoidance being propagated by these big global digital giants is failing, or has not had any noticeable effect so far.
What specifically regarding the fight nationally rather than globally, HMRC saying that we make sure large businesses like everyone else pay all taxes due. They secured over £9 billion in additional tax revenue from the largest and most complex businesses, and they subject large businesses to an exceptional level of scrutiny, they say. Are they doing their job?
Well, the sad answer to that is we'll never know, because the transparency in this area is severely lacking. So, the story that's being covered today by all the news outlets is about the UK accounts of Amazon, and they only tell a partial picture of the activity of Amazon in this country. The UK accounts show about £2 billion in revenue in the UK, but we know from the US filed accounts of Amazon that they make about $11 billion in revenue in the UK. So a huge amount of Amazon's business is being conducted offshore. We can't see what's going on. We only really see the tip of the iceberg. And so as members of the public and as NGOs and other groups who want to follow this, who want to engage in the debate, we can not see very much about what's going on with Amazon. So one of the key things we need to do, and what Parliament needs to act, is greater transparency on multinational companies, so that we know exactly how much money they're making in this country, so that we can have a much better idea of the appropriate tax which is being paid and whether HMRC are really doing their job.
And for you, is it specifically with regards to what you're talking about there, is that to do with sales recorded elsewhere, even if they are in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, the way that Amazon is structured is that they have a kind of warehousing and distribution business here in the UK. But when you log on online and buy something, you're not actually buying it from the UK company, you're buying it from abroad. So that revenue is being booked somewhere else. It's pooled with loads of other countries in Europe, and therefore it's very difficult to break out of that. What are the costs actually incurred in the UK? What are the profits being made in the UK? But the profit levels being displayed in the UK business are very suspiciously low, which would suggest a large amount of profits being shifted offshore. I mean, just to give you one example, I was reading today a report on booksellers Now, if Amazon paid the kind of same percentage of their turnover in tax that booksellers do, their tax bill would be close to $100 million rather than the few million pounds we've seen today.
Interesting. Well, HMRC, as I said, would say that they are doing everything they can, exceptional levels of scrutiny, but more questions perhaps need to be asked. George, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Heather Zubarraga is a financial analyst and a very smart one, and she joins us tonight. Heather, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Tyler.
So how does it work that one of the biggest companies in the world, an American company, pays no federal taxes?
Well, that's a good question. I think this is a nonpartisan issue. President Trump has stated that Amazon is a no-tax monopoly, right? Both Democrats and Republicans alike would say that we're in agreement with that statement, and that is not okay. Although they do pay state and local income taxes, they pay zero federal income tax.
Let me just correct one thing there. Actually, no. The New York Times today leapt to Amazon's defense, in effect, by saying, oh, that's not really true. I mean, they instinctively defended a company for paying no federal taxes. This is how upside down our world is. That's
unusual. I would expect most Democrats or a liberal newspaper or source to back to not back a big corporation paying zero federal income tax.
Yeah, you would think that, but it's a very liberal corporation, so maybe they see themselves as a lie.
So here's the reason why they get away with it. From the source's various tax breaks, right? They're saying that executive stock options are allowing them to pay zero federal income tax. Now, it's not illegal. These are tax loopholes. It's in our tax code, our current tax system, so they're taking advantage of that. But it doesn't seem right or fair. A company that raked in $175 billion last year. This just isn't right. I'm sure you paid more in federal taxes.
Well, I did, but also
Amazon.
I haven't put tens of thousands of people out of work like Amazon has. They've hired a lot, but they put many more out of work. They've destroyed many more businesses than they've created. Look, I get it. That's the nature of market capitalism, but they feel no obligation to give back at all to the federal treasury at all?
Well, what's worse is that they're able to grandfather in deferred taxes. So deferred taxes, those that they've delayed in the past, which is perfectly legal. Now they can have those taxed at the lower corporate tax rate effective January 1 of 21% versus 35% when the income and revenue was earned in the prior years, 2014, 2015. So, I mean, that's ridiculous. We would all love to resend our taxes, right? And let me pay my lower individual income rate now, because individual rates are now taxed at a lower bracket as are corporate rates. And that's just ludicrous. That shouldn't be allowed.
No, it shouldn't. And yet the default, and even, the president said this during the campaign, the default for people in businesses, well, it's allowed, therefore you got to do it. Well, it's also allowed to scream obscenities at your elderly parents, but it's wrong, and you shouldn't do it. No, but it's not illegal, okay? There are a lot of things that aren't illegal, but they're immoral. And so, does any company ever say, you know what, this is our nation, America, and we're going to give back a little bit, maybe? Do they ever say that?
Yeah, well, they should, and it gets worse, because at the state and local level, they're now offering tax incentives for Amazon to put their second headquarters in their town, and all that's a legitimate thing to want for your city, not at the expense of taxpayers.
Right, I agree. Now, Amazon, we reached out to them today, did not respond. One of the questions I wanted to ask, and I'll end on this, does that mean I still have to pay my federal taxes?
You do.
Do our viewers have to pay theirs?
Unfortunately, as the current tax code stands, we do, and that's just how it is.
Okay, so we do, but Jeff Bezos doesn't. I just want to be totally clear. Heather, thank you for straightening it out for us. This is turning me into like a crazy person.